Please rewind this cassette.
So all the leaks were true. I can't believe this shit, man. Like, really? Now I know how the show ends, and I'm not happy with it. So I've been accused of being a hate watcher, someone who looks for the negative in every episode. However, I have to say, one comment I saw over and over again was that the purpose of the Battle of Winterfell was to even the odds. Dany won't be as OP when attacking King's Landing now. Cersei might have a chance. Well, guess what? D&D decided that dragons are strong again, so shit went down in this episode. One thing I have to say, this was the most cinematic episode in a long time. In fact, it's one of the bigger episodes, if not the largest scale episode of the entire show. Miguel SpaghettiOs did a much better job this time around directing this episode. You could see everything. There's no denying some fan satisfaction and moments during this extended sequence. We see Drogon's shadow flying over King's Landing. This goes back to Bran seeing this in a previous season. This was easily some of the most satisfying dragon effects we've seen so far. There was a lot of great kills. One that stood out to me was some guy taking 2 axes to the face. That was just brutal shit, man. The actors really do try to do their best with the material given, and I don't want people to think just because I criticize the character so much that I dislike the actors. I don't really blame them for any of the issues. This episode is filled with broad strokes, and these actors can sell melodrama. So this did have entertainment value in ways that the previous 2 episodes lacked, in sort of a guilty pleasure way. However, I don't think any of this forgives the mistakes of the past. Dany all of a sudden being the villain feels incredibly rushed. I know a lot of people are saying that they've been setting this up for years, that she's going to be the Mad Queen, but Robb Stark killed people, and really just by his own morals of what he thought was noble. Ned Stark did the same thing in the first episode of Game of Thrones. Nothing that Dany's done, I don't think, is too insane. It's just on a larger scale. And a lot of the time, I think when you take the context, the historical context, or what the show's trying to be, at least set in that time and that kind of reality, I think Dany's pretty justified in a lot of her decisions. And I also think she's shown as a pretty level-headed person. She often has listened to others and changed her mind on things. Like last season, she just wanted to kill everyone in King's Landing as soon as they got there, and everyone convinced her not to. Then basically everything has gone bad for her since then. So now she's like, well, I'm sick of this shit. I mean, I know they try to set up some dramatic tension, you know, with the bells and all that, that if you hear the bells, let the people live, and then Dany decides, fuck it, I'm gonna burn them anyway. And maybe they could have been more clever about it. Maybe while she's burning the city, she accidentally sets off all that wildfire that we saw, so it does kill everyone, and it's not totally her fault. But clearly D&D wanted it to be Dany's the villain, and everyone during this moment realizes it and decides that they have to turn against her. Which I just don't know how I feel about it. I mean, for a 6-episode season, this all happened so quickly. I don't know. Maybe other people thought it'd feel earned. I didn't think it felt organic at all. Especially the early scenes. I was laughing my ass off when Dany hadn't eaten in a few days because I didn't think she wanted the food from the kitchen because Varys had spies in the kitchen. He had children, or at least one child. But just seeing her face all sunken in and she's looking out the window and she just looks evil. I thought that stuff was so funny. I'm sure George R. R. Martin is planning on something similar to this with Dany's character, but the pacing of this plotline needed a lot more time dedicated to it. If they had listened to Dany at the start, they could have avoided all of this. At the start of Season 7, she just wanted to fly into King's Landing and get the job done. Tyrion can blame himself for these deaths as much as he wants to blame anybody else. Speaking of rushed storylines, Varys suffers the same fate as Littlefinger, that being a once great character going out for acting like a total idiot. Varys loves Dany, and then just decides to turn against her. In fact, I think this episode had a lot of unsatisfying deaths for major characters. I thought I would feel so much more when we got to these moments. The weakest part of this episode is early on. So Jaime goes up north to fight death, and then bangs Brienne a few times, realizes he loves Cersei, and rides back to King's Landing. But Dany captures him, until Tyrion sets him free. Dany is somehow unaware of this as nobody mentions it the next morning. This is clearly trying to be a mirror to the scene in Season 4 where Jaime helps Tyrion escape, or even Season 2 where the Starks had Jaime captured. Sure, it's emotional seeing Tyrion hug Jaime, but this storyline was just lazy and convoluted. The episode does pick up when we get to the attack of King's Landing. In the last episode, the Scorpions seem like they can't be beat. They had like perfect accuracy, they easily took out a dragon, a near flawless design by Qyburn. Now, Dany destroys them with ease? Okay. The writers approach this in a much more practical way now. Like, oh look, the guys have to reload these things, and the dragon can move in directions and areas to where they can't shoot it easily, so she can take them out. I just don't see why this didn't happen before. It sure is convenient now that things have a little bit of logic to them in this sequence, when before these scorpions were overpowered. This also makes Dany right again with her plans in Season 7, which I keep bringing up. Imagine what she could have done to King's Landing with 3 dragons. Honestly, she would have just gone there, killed Cersei and Euron, most of their army, and probably spared the majority of the lives in King's Landing. But no, we couldn't have that, so now we have to have a Mad Queen storyline. I guess the death of the dragons and all the loss feels sort of pointless when Dany just wins so easily. I know she struggled a lot over the last couple of seasons, but this was one-sided as hell. After a while, I got the feeling that I was just watching disaster porn. Sure, it was fucking beautiful, but did it mean anything? Jon doesn't want to bang his aunt, but he stays on her side until the later half of the episode. Jaime gets in a fight with Euron, and one thing I liked in this episode is how they used Jaime's golden hand a few times. Early in the episode, he tells Tyrion that he got captured over his hand. Later on, he tries to use the same hand as a way to get the Lannister soldiers to open the gates for him at King's Landing. And then even after that, he uses it to fight Euron. So it's actually pretty neat that there was something consistent like that in this episode. Be it something as simple as that to come up with. There was nothing like mind-blowing about anything they did with his hand. Euron's such a laughable character. Even his last line is fucking comedic gold, but in all the wrong ways. Dany starts burning everybody. Jon Snow is having his Saving Private Ryan moment. Dany hears some bells and has her the Grinch Stole Christmas moment. We get Clegane Bowl. A lot happens. I just don't feel the payoff. Cersei and Jaime dying together felt cheap and way too easy. Cersei didn't do anything this season, and I really don't understand her character. When they die in each other's arms, I really didn't feel anything. Sure, this is subjective, but I can't be the only one who thought it lacks some punch. Arya runs around a lot. There isn't much to talk about this episode in analytical terms. Perhaps I am too risible, but I found evil-looking Dany to be hilarious. I found all of this to be so just comedic. All of this seems so sudden and over the top. Sure, there was a lot of brutality in this episode that satisfied me, but they didn't set this up well. Everything became so insane and melodramatic to give the illusion of it all being epic when really it was shallow. The episode ends with an overlong scene of Arya riding off on a horse, whatever the fuck that meant. It felt like D&D just wanted to wrap everything up and tried to cram it all into one episode. If we're being fair, a lot of the missteps starting in Season 5 have led to the writers having a few satisfying options. They've kind of written themselves into a corner. It would take so much work to put the chess pieces back into their proper place. I think I like the Hound death scene. I'm not sure. This season has been weird, man. But next week it all comes to an end. I remember a time when I would have watched this show for 15 seasons. Now I'm sort of ready to move on. I know a lot of people think that I'm just jealous of bigger YouTubers and that's why I'm doing Game of Thrones videos, although that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I could have been doing Game of Thrones videos this whole time. I know a lot of people think that I just hate watch the show and that's my entertainment value, but that's not true. I genuinely want to like the show and I like moments and I dislike other ones. I know a lot of people think I'm just trying to make money off of this and be a leech. I get that. I get how you guys could feel that way. Maybe I lacked tact in my previous 2 reviews. But you gotta understand, when I get done watching the episode, I'm very emotional, either in an angry way or I just can't believe what I just saw. And I start recording and I just start turning it into a rant a little bit. There was no format to it. I plan on changing that with the last video. I am going to be doing a live stream next Sunday once the finale's over. And then I'm going to be doing a full Season 8 review, which I'm hoping to be a little bit more formatted and have some constructive criticisms and something that's a little bit more balanced, at least with the way I approach the video. But yeah, 10 years of Game of Thrones, basically. I remember watching this so many years ago, and I remember watching it rise to its success. And now as its success feels like it's really going to just fade away, it's not going out on a high note, I see myself finding a new pathway in my YouTube career, in my YouTube journey, something that I just do as a hobby. And I was thinking about, while watching this episode, just, that line that Varys has in the first episode of the season, that nothing lasts.